Howdy folks, welcome back to the Bunnies and Bees Micro Farm. Making salsa today. We had just enough jalapenos. So we got our green peppers, chopped onions in here, tomatoes. We got our white vinegar. We're about to drop our seasoning. We got our canning jars just boiling, 15 minutes to sterilize. All we did was we diced up the jalapeno, the green pepper, the onions, small dice, and then we pureed quickly tomatoes with just the tops cut off. So the skin is still in here and everything. And 1 6-ounce can of tomato paste. Smells delicious. So here we got our ingredients all mixed together. I'm just going to sprinkle that in. You got 1 tablespoon of cumin. You got 2 tablespoons of cayenne pepper, 2 tablespoons of salt, 2 tablespoons of oregano. I think that's everything. If I missed anything, I'll double check the recipe. And we're just stirring this in. We're going to bring this to a boil. Then we're going to turn it to medium heat. Oh man, does that smell good. I am not using cilantro this year. I don't prefer to taste the cilantro. If I do, it's very, very minimal. Boy, does this smell good right now. All right. Sorry about the poor camera footage. So all we're doing now is we're bringing this to a boil. We're going to thicken it up. As it's just starting to come to a boil, so I'll reduce the heat. We'll boil it on like a medium-low temperature. Stirring very often just because of you don't want the tomato sauce to burn, and it will burn. So I have to get all my stuff in here. So scrape the sides periodically. But man, does this smell good. So right now it's a little bit on the thin side, but it will thicken up. You don't want to add too much tomato paste though, because you'll start to change the flavor. Okay, I'm going to reduce this temperature here because my canning jar has still got another 9 minutes, so there's plenty of time. I got 9 pint jars in the boiling water. I'm probably only gonna be able to can, I don't know, maybe half dozen, 6. So I have my lids and rings in hot water. They're not, the stove isn't on, that burner's not on. They're just warming up. Even though Ball says you don't necessarily need to do this step anymore, I still think it's a good idea to soften up those sealing rings on top of, or on the bottom of the lid. I think it's a good idea. A little stir here. This is the fruits of your labors right here. The preserving is the best attribute to raising a garden. I still got 1 jar of salsa left downstairs from last year. Unfortunately, I'm only going to be able to do this 1 batch for this year. Don't have enough jalapeno peppers, but I actually have a guy at work going to give me some jalapenos. If he comes through, I'll do a second batch, so we'll probably end up with about 12 pints of salsa downstairs. That'll get us through till next season without having to buy any. If I can recommend one thing, is to get this book. Best purchase ever. See, it's starting to thicken up nicely. Now with this batch of salsa, I was short on jalapenos though. I ended up only using 6 jalapeno when the recipe calls for 8. But I did compensate a little bit with cayenne pepper and a little extra green pepper. It almost looks like it could use a little more green peppers. So this is pretty hot. So now I just shut this burner off. And I'm going to take my jars out one at a time. Just going to pour out a little bit of water. Actually, I might have to pour out a little bit more than I want to, because we got to get these jars onto the counter, so getting ready to put the salsa in. Stand by. It's a little bit tough to do this one-handed, but I'm going to do my best. You just want to, I'm keeping some of the water in here because you want to keep the jars as hot as possible. You don't want to pour hot contents into a cold jar. That's how you crack your jars. You don't necessarily have to watch me take all these out. It gets a little boring and I don't want to risk dropping one on my bare feet. You can see how nice and thick it's getting right now. A little bit more, and we'll be ready to ladle it into the jars. Okay, so I moved this pot a little bit closer to the jars. Shut that fan off there. So to make a little bit less mess. But all I'm going to do is dump this hot water into this sink. And that is scorching, scalding hot water, I should say. And you're just going to leave that right here. All right, let me just grab my canning funnel. Okay, so now I'm using my long gone deceased Aunt Annie's ladle. I love this ladle and I miss my Aunt Annie. Just going to ladle it right into the jars. Trying not to make a mess. And you're going to fill the jar till it's about a 1/2 inch from the top. That's a nice looking salsa right there. Okay. Should be good enough. That's good enough. All right. So I'm not going to show you every single jar. It's a little easier with 2 hands than 1. But you get the idea. Okay, so I only ended up with 4 pints. I thought it was going to be a little bit more, but I was wrong. So now you just want to take a wet, clean rag or paper towel, just wipe around the rim just to make sure you got nothing on there that'll contaminate the seal. Like, see that little bit? So you want to make sure that you clean it good. The other ones were pretty good. All right, so now the lids and rings. All right, so I have my lids and rings in this hot water, warm water. So I'm able to grab it, you know, the whole thing together. You're just gonna put it right on there using your little magnet. And you're just gonna do these finger tight, so I'll have to do it without the holding the phone. But you're just gonna just touch this with like 3 fingers and just slightly snug it, because you got to allow for the spores, botulism spores and all that to exhaust themselves out of the jar. So during the process, the trapped airs and the spores and all that stuff, they're going to actually be able to come out of this jar. They're going to boil out between the lid and the jar itself. That has to escape. So once you lower the temperature, when you're done with the process, then the lids are going to suck down, and it's not going to allow any more air into the jar. If it does, you're going to allow bacteria to form in there. Now this ring is a little dirty. I'm just going to use one of the other rings here to be fine. All right, I'll snug these up and go to the next step. All right, so now we're going to lower these right down into the water. And I got to add some hot water, but I'm going to turn the burner on right now. But you want to cover. I just turned the burner back on, but you want to actually cover these with about a 1/2 inch of water over the top. So I got to add some water while this is reheating up. So as you can see, those are covered with water. We're going to re-add our lid. We're going to bring this back up to a boil. And we're going to process it for the amount of time. I believe it's 30 minutes. I'm going to double check. Stand by. So we're going to process them once they come to a boil for 20 minutes. Then we're going to shut off the heat, and then let them sit for 5 minutes inside the boiling water. Then we'll remove them from the canner back onto the towel on the counter. And then they'll begin their cooling, and you'll start to hear the lids popping, snapping, sealing shut. So if you noticed, I definitely sterilized more jars than I needed, just in case. There's nothing worse than getting into a batch and not having enough jars. It doesn't hurt them. They'll just dry out. I'll put them back together lightly and store them for the next batch. So I ran it for 20 minutes. Then it sat off burner for 5 minutes. Timer just went off, so now we're going to remove these from here. So I just kind of tip them, let the water drain off, and we're going to just park them here on the towel. You do not want to put these on a cold counter, granite counter, or anything like that, because it can have a temperature fluctuation and cause a breakage. So you can see this is pretty easy to do, nothing complicated. Unfortunately, we were only able to do a small batch today, but like I said, oh, one of them just popped. When I get these other jalapenos for my friend next week, I'll be able to probably triple or, oh, there you go, triple or quadruple the batch. You can hear it, lids popping. Got one more to go. Maybe we'll get lucky and it'll pop right away. Maybe, maybe not. So don't be afraid to try something new. Get into canning. Don't be afraid of it. It's a simple process. Just use good sterile processes as you're doing it. Cleanliness and everything. Boil them jars, clean the lids, and watch your process times. Very simple. Until the next project.